Hey, what's up, everybody? I got a couple people on Twitter today talking about Ethereum because Smokey is his name. Go out there and follow him. He was saying, why is so many people so daggone bearish on Ethereum? And I told him, I've been looking at it a little bit, and I think I'm a little bit kind of on both sides, but I kind of looked at it a little bit closer today, looking at some Fibonacci levels, and I think I'm leaning toward the bullish side. So I want to do a quick video and explain on why I'm a little bit more on the bullish side for Ethereum than I am on the bearish side. Before we get started, a little shout out to Paul McNeil at the Crypto Curator. This is his site. If you want access to his daily brief that he writes, see, I'm not a fundamental guy. I'm not a news guy. I'm a TA guy, so I don't really care what's happening in the news. I care if that news is coming into the indicators and the models that I follow. But I do like to follow some of the news after I do my TA, and I found that what Paul does here at the Crypto Curator, he does a daily crypto watch, and really breaks it down into a lot of really easy sectors to know what's going on. So just simply just follow him on Twitter, or even out on LinkedIn, the Crypto Curator, and it's Paul McNeil that runs that. And then of course, if you want to gain, after you follow him a little bit, you probably want to go out to his Patreon site and be a supporter there, because he's a hard worker, and anybody that can back him, that would be great. So little shout out to the Crypto Curator. Now let's get on to the chart. Looking at Ethereum, I just pulled up the daily Ethereum USD chart out on BitMEX. The only things I'm going to look at on this video, I'm just going to look at the RSI down here, which is the orange line here, and I got that based on a 14 period or 14 day. So I don't really like changing that too much. I like the 14 on the RSI. On the ADX, which is the black line here, and then the directional index lines. The red is the negative directional index, and the green is the positive directional index. And I also got 14 periods on that also to kind of match it up with the RSI. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of run in, or go back in the past to the December low, and work from that point forward to see how the Fibonacci levels kind of worked out. Just basically kind of the way I kind of look at things when I'm looking at the different directions that the price is taking, and which way the market's correcting, to know if it's going to hold or not. So let's jump back here, and just bear with me, because we're going to go through a bunch of this. So if you get to an area on here that you want to just fast forward to it, just go to that point. But I'm going to start back here in December. I'm going to put the magnet on, so it'll be a little easier to see the fibs from the actual levels. So bring out our first retracement here. Start at the low right here, go up to the high right at this point, right at that level. So you're starting at a low of 80.70, and you're going up to a high of 159.50. And the interesting thing is that first leg down right here, it went right to the 61.8% level of 110.80, and then kind of bounced from that point. And then if you go from this point down and then all the way back up, you get a full retracement all the way back up to the high again at 159.50. I'm not going to draw it in there, but you can see that you go from the low here and bounce right back up to the high again. And then you can also go from this low to this high, and then you hit it again right, just in the midpoint here, and then it gets a full retracement. So you go from this point all the way back up and then all the way back down again. So I'm not going to draw it again, but that's just a low to a high, and then all the way back to a full retracement back to where you were before. So now you're looking at moving to the downside here. So what now that you're at a full retracement at this point, one of the things that I would look at is the fib retracement going from the high here to this point right here. And the first thing that I'll look at is when it comes down to that low, it pops back up, but it hits the 38.2% level. And that's that first level I look at to see if it's going to hold or not to continue the trend to the downside. And as you can see, it kind of popped up and it hit right at that level at 131.50, but kept the trend to the downside. So some of the things that we can look at as it's continuing the bearish trend, then you would want to move it out to the next low, to get the full length of this bearish trend here, and then the 38.2% becomes 123.70. So that's the level that it needs to break to get back out of this zone. So what I would do, I would actually draw in a trend line here, right at, kind of in this trend, right around this point. So when you see it pop up here and you got a little bit of a breakout and you're in this kind of consolidation zone before you get the breakout right here, you could draw a couple different trend lines in there, but that's kind of the one I would look at, because one of the things you're going to see is this green candle right here, right when it moves up to the trend line. One of the things that happens is, one, you're getting a cross of the green positive directional index on the ADX and the red's falling, so you're getting a little bit of a cross right here. And then you're also getting into an area that I noticed. I'm gonna draw this line in because this is going to be a line that we're going to kind of look at as we go out into the future. If you put in a line right about at this point right here, so as this was breaking down and keeping us into this bearish trend, the RSI was getting into the oversold area, or reducing, or just getting lower. So, but if you draw a line right here, where the RSI starts to dip down, this is going to be a level that we're going to look at, as we go out into the future here, and I'll show you what I mean later on. But one of the things that was happening is you got a cross right here, and then the RSI bumped back up above this line, so we're already getting more buying interest off of this, just showing the off the RSI, and then also the ADX was kind of leveling out as the bulls were taken out, and then they break to the upside. So once this 38.2% level broke to the upside, it negates a further downside for this. So this is a whole area of a possible buy in the market. I wasn't buying ETH at this time. I was actually buying Bitcoin at this time because it was in a pretty similar pattern back here in February when everyone was thinking it was tanking. This was a time where it was a nice buy to get the bull trend going, and this was one of the signals that was telling me that this thing was kind of turning around a little bit. And as you can see, it pops up and then comes back down right at this level at the 38.2. But let me get this out of here so you guys can see. It'll get kind of crowded with some fib numbers in here. If we get in here and go from this low, so we're looking at the leg going this direction. As you can see, the market went up to 166.40, pops back down to the 61.8% level, 125. Now this is going to be the level to watch to see if this is going to continue for the bulls. So if you're a buyer in here and this pops up and comes back down and it's getting pretty close to your break even, you're going to want to know, is this a place to buy? One of the things that I would look at, and there's other things behind the scenes, but I'm just going to show you on the RSI and the ADX here. When this dropped to the 61.8% level here at 125.15, the RSI was kind of testing that level of, down here I call it the bearish zone, and up here is the bullish zone. And it was kind of testing this support to where it should try to break down into the bearish zone, but it kind of held. And another thing is the ADX was kind of dropping, so there wasn't a lot of momentum for trend really either way. So that was a good sign that the bears weren't really gaining momentum. So that was going to kind of help bring in some buying interest that I think could hold at this level. And of course the ADX kind of continued to drop, and you didn't really have the directional index lines giving you really a sense of direction, and that's why you had a little bit of area of consolidation in here. But this held, and then it got back up to the 38.2 right here, and then it broke to the upside. Now, since that held, one of the things I would look at is just this movement right here, as it moves down to the 61.8%. It made a full retracement back to the high again, working its way back up. So now what I would do is I would go grab another fib and just say, okay, now we're looking at this leg, starting at this low here, and then work up to the high here. It worked its way up to the previous high. And actually another thing that you can do before I do that, let's look at the fib going this direction, from the high of 166.40 down to 125. One of the things that you could do is once it gets to the full retracement and it pops back out, the area between the 127.2 and the 141.4 would be a good spot to to look at if this thing's going to continue higher and just run right on out here for the bulls and get parabolic, or what it is that it's an extension off the high. Well, let me get it to where it's supposed to be. There we go. The 100 levels right here, and then it pops up into this up to the 141.4%, and these are extension levels. So when you make it into a new high, this is where it just kind of runs into a little bit of a new high, and that could be an area of selling interest, and that's what happened to bring this market back to the downside. So even though it made the full retracement, it kind of pumped up just a little bit further. So if you're getting a little bit of bullish momentum here, and this is working up to the high, look for it to pop toward an extension so you can gain a little bit more in the market if you're long. And of course we're long because this is where we bought back here as we're working to the upside. So this could be an area of profit taking, or if you want, you can keep the long, and as it keeps testing support levels, you can just continue long and just ride it out, just ride the broad market and just hold it longer term instead of trying to trade in and out of it. So now that you've established that as an area of selling interest, now we go back to here and look at this leg from the low to the high of 187.60. It works its way to the 61.8% level. So as this drops right here, you could think, okay, if you took profit here, this would be an area that you might want to buy back in, or it's an area that if you stayed long, you would want to continue, you're long here, or you put a stop below it. But as you can see, let's dip down here. One of the things is the RSI was dipping a little bit underneath this line, so that's the first signal that it's like, okay, that's making me a little nervous. But what is kind of going against that is the ADX continues to drop. As price is dropping here, the ADX is dropping, and then we're getting back into this area of really not telling us anything. So it's really not giving us a lot of strength for trend in either direction. Now, one of the things that you notice as this is starting to go lower is, of course, the negative directional index was popping up a little bit, but as it was making this high, this kind of levels off and it doesn't continue higher. I know I'm getting a little bit minute when you look at this, but the ADX really tells you a lot if you really look back at history and try to learn how it works. But as the ADX is dropping here, it's losing momentum for the bears that were trying to gain momentum. So to me, here you got some support as selling interest gets kind of strong, but you don't have enough momentum to push you through a key level that a lot of people are going to be looking at, and it's at 61.8% level. So that would be an area of possible buying or continuing the long, or place some stops under this, because if this breaks, most likely it's going to drop all the way back down to 124, and then that would where you'd want to reevaluate if you want to go long there. So now we're sitting here and it pops back up. So again, you do the same kind of thing. You got the high to the low, and it works its way back up to a full retracement right at this point. And then it breaks to the upside. Now we can do what we did before and pull a fib level out and look at this move right here. And it got up to the 141.4, but it punched right through it because the momentum's really strong. Buying interest is there. Everything was pushing it to the upside. So you wouldn't want to sell here because the momentum's too strong. So you would want to continue the long to the upside. So now what you want is, let's look at the leg here all the way to this point right here. Goes all the way up. We had a really interesting candle right here where it dropped straight down to the 61.8% level right here, 197.50, and kind of bounced really quickly. So that was a good sign that that the bulls are still in control, just off of that daily candle, just finding a lot of buying interest that popped the candle right back up. So now we can move this, go over to the next level, taking this low here that just made, and then it worked its way up to this high right here, and then came back down to the 61.8% level. Let me get rid of this one so we can see the low here at 191 up to the high at 288.75, works its way back down to the 228.35. Again, let's look down here what's happening. The RSI is still staying in the bullish zone. It's testing that support, and momentum is dropping as the bulls or as the bears are trying to take control, and the ADX is continuing to drop. So you're getting that same kind of scenario that you did back at these other levels where the 61.8% level was holding. So if you did take some profit on this huge run up to the upside here. This might be an area that you might want to get back in, or if from when you've bought back here in February and you've added longs, or you're continuing to just ride the same long and riding the same trend, then this is telling you that you should just hold on for a little bit longer. And then we go into this next level. So if you go in and do the same kind of thing again, I know it's repetitive, but this is how it's just really interesting on how it works. If you put this high down to this low right here, you got 141.4 right here, and that could be an area of selling. And what makes sense for this as an area of sell is, the ADX is just starting to increase right here as the bulls are increasing, and of course you get this spike up. But then this is the spot where you could start to think it would be over. I probably wouldn't sell there because I'm thinking that it's going to continue higher since it's kind of pushed back above this 141. But it's that next day that you have this large red candle back to the downside. So this might have got me. I probably would have sold here and missed out. Or probably wouldn't have sold because I thought it was going to continue, and then it dropped back, and I probably would have lost a little bit there. But that's fine because we've been long for a while. But it's this next level that gets pretty interesting because you're going to go from this low to this high right here. Now it pops down to the 61.8% level right here, but it goes right back up to the 38.2 and holds and works its way back down. Now what's happening in here is, and this is where your sell is going to come in. You got the 61.8% at 280.40, and then it breaks to the downside. So what was happening down here? Not much of momentum yet, but it starts to kick in on this large red candle, of course, where the momentum starts to kick in. But before that, as it was approaching the 61.8% level, the RSI dipped down below that level that we looked back and we established back here to know the difference between the bullish and the bearish zones. This moved down into the bearish zone, came back up on a little bit of a pullback to where this line now becomes resistance off into the future. And so on the break of this right here, this might be an area that we might want to sell off the longs that we have going forward. Now, I'm gonna kind of go through the rest of this pretty quickly on this side. So now we're going the other direction. Let's look at the Fibonacci retracement going from this high to this low right here. And of course, we just established that that was the area off the 38.2 to the downside. But then you go down to the next low, which is right there. As this pops lower, now you got this whole leg here. Or if you want, you can start from this leg here. Because this is where it kind of held, and this is the next leg down. The 38.2% level is that first shallow fib that I'm going to look at to see if this continues to the downside. Well, you got a couple of things. The market comes up and hits it, comes back down and hits it again, but the whole time is that the bears are still maintaining control, and the ADX is increasing, so you're getting some trend momentum, and of course the resistance on the RSI is the buying interest came into the market, but it wasn't really taking off to get us back into this bullish zone. So this was an area that if you wanted to buy in here, I would want to buy on a break of momentum going back for the bulls. And right now the bears are in control and working to the downside. So as you can see, we kept going lower and lower and lower. So what I would do is I would just keep extending this trend to the downside here to where it goes down all the way down to the next low. To where now we got this whole leg going. There's a couple of different ways of doing it, but this is the way I would do it. So as long as the 38.2 is continuing to hold on each of the moves to the upside, I want to keep moving this down and just continuing this as a whole leg. So if you get into wave patterns, you'll understand why I do that. But I'm not going to talk about that in this video because it gets pretty in depth. But this is the next level, and of course the 38.2% level comes in at 223.90. It pops right back up to that point. We got a lot of bullishness in here, so you got a little bit of a switch. It moved into the bulls right at this point because if you draw in if you kind of draw in a trend line right here, you're going to have some near-term trend break right here to where it kind of pops up. But it moves to that 38.2, so that's kind of your first level to say, does this continue the trend, longer term on this trend line now, which we'll talk about here in a second. But it pops up and then it continues to the downside. So you have the low here to the high here, and it makes a full retracement. So we can get rid of this now and work on this low to this high. Whoop. Hold on, messing up here. If we get to on this low to this high, I think I got it. There. You get the full retracement. You got a 61.8% level right here. Breaks to a full retracement. Kind of extends down to that 127 to 141 level. It just goes into the 127. So it's a little bit of an extension there to know that this is where it should reverse or it should continue to the bears. One of the things is, this large red candle kind of took us into the bearishness here and the bearishness here. But things are starting to level out a little bit. As we get into this point, the ADX starts to drop, and then the bears try to keep control here. But it's at this point right here, the ADX drops, and we lose a lot of momentum, and it goes into, the bulls take control of the trend, but the trend is dropping in trend strength. So it goes into this somewhat of a neutral range-bound market. And as you can see right here, this pops up, and we've been in the bullish zone on the RSI based on this establishment that we've had from this long run to know where this would be. And this has been in the bullish zone. The bulls are in control. However, the momentum's just not there, and that's why we broke this trend line right at this point, right at this point here, right at this point right here, and then it breaks to the upside. But it breaks from a bearish market into not a bullish market, but a neutral market. But I still think the bulls have a little bit of an edge here. For one, the indicators are showing that. But if you look at some of the fib levels, if we just keep working the fibs here and just kind of messing around here, if you go from this low to this high, this did a full retracement right here, and then up to the 100%. So this 197.95 has become key resistance. But then let's go the other direction, looking from the low where we're at right now to the high right here. And let's blow this up because it's getting a little tight in here. But as you can see, from this low to this high, the market has worked its way back down to the 38.2% at 181 or so. And that level right here has been support. Now, of course, you had, we're getting into this area of consolidation, but I think the bulls are the ones that still have a little bit of an edge, and of course that trend line that I had drawn in here shows that it broke to the upside. We just need some bullish momentum, so that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking for, and that's why I lean it toward the bulls here. As long as this holds right here, that I think this establishes a nice break of that trend line that I had, and then the 38.2 is the hold that should continue it to the upside. Now, if it breaks the 38.2, the 170.65 will come into play. Let's bring this out a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. See how it's kind of holding here? Hold. If it breaks, then you get into this area of very little support, so it should drop pretty much from 182 all the way to 170. If that happens, we'll check to see if this breaks down into the bearish zone, this crosses here, or builds some momentum. But right now, I think we can ride sideways here with a little bit of a hopeful some bullish action. So when everyone's out there on Twitter saying this thing's really, really negative and bearish to the downside, I don't see that. I don't really see it strong bullish, but I do lean a little bit more toward that movement. And then, of course, the 61.8% level will be that level that we'll watch and maintain from there to see if this thing continues. So if you were following along here and you sold out and you've been waiting for another spot to get back in, right in this area might be a good spot to get back in. If you want to be a little bit more aggressive, you can wait for the 170. But then, of course, your stop's going to be under there because a break of the 61.8% level will bring in a full retracement back to 152. So these are the levels of support to watch. You got your near-term support at 182. You got your what I would call key support at 170, and then your critical support is at 152. Because if it breaks that, then this thing's going crazy to the downside. So right now, I would actually be a buyer in here. Not financial advice, but this would be an area that I would buy. And then if it does break and the indicators are showing that this should hold based on what we saw on a lot of the other holds that we saw in here, that would be an area where I would buy, and then I would stop it out if things start to look like it's starting to switch. So that's what I had for a quick run through of Ethereum. Just using fib levels, a couple trend lines, the ADX and the RSI, just kind of working them together. Of course, there's some other things that you want to do when you get into areas where you get into here where it makes you a little nervous. Go down to some earlier time frames, go down to the 12-hour, go to the 4-hour, just to see if there's anything that's building some strength for the bears here, and see if it's going to push it to the downside, just to bring some validation to this daily indicator, because this, of course, these are all lagged, so it takes you want to go into some earlier time frames to see what's going on. But you can find a lot of information just off the daily and these two indicators, and using the fib levels as your support and resistance going forward. So that's what I got. So if you have any questions or comments, I'm out on Twitter at FiboSwanny. I know there's a lot in here, so any fib questions, any questions about the ADX? I do have a video out there on the ADX. It's about 8 minutes long, and it explains it pretty quickly. Actually, it might be 15 minutes. I can't remember. I have not done one on the RSI yet. I should, because I usually use the RSI for zones between bullish and bearish, not so much for the overbought, oversold that a lot of people use it for. Not that it's wrong. I just don't use it for that, but a lot of people do, I'm sure, and do really well with it. But I use it for more of zones than I do overbought, oversold conditions. Other than that, let me know if you have any questions. And I will talk to you guys later. Happy trading, and peace out.